I first started with the company, our predominant business was making big analog mixing consoles. Within a week of me starting, one of the things I went on was a training course for the early digital products that we were about to make. Literally, as I joined SSL started to sell digital editing products. So we've kind of had a balance of analog and digital pretty much ever since then, really. The big split with the customers that were interested in the technology, and also the technology that we were developing, really. So with the big analog mixing consoles, we were very focused on commercial recording studios. For our early digital products, our first main focus was in the world of post-production, and that was because at the time SSL was a sister company of a company called Quantel. Quantel were very big into digital video editing and video graphics, but they needed some kind of digital audio editor to sit alongside that. And so that was our kind of first large-scale digital product, really, it's amusing to think back on it now, but it was a 6U audio editor, 8 tracks. It had an 8-inch hard disk that had the magnificent size of 330 megabytes. Me at the time could never envisage where we are today, where I've got probably 1,000 times that amount of capacity sat on the phone in my pocket. So it's amazing to think how that technology's sort of evolved and changed. We try to live on 3 legs, basically. So, music production and recording studios is one of those legs. Broadcast is another significant one of those legs. And in recent years, live is a sort of focus for us. Prior to live being that third leg, we were very much into post-production. The broadcast customers and the post-production and now live customers are almost entirely sort of focused on digital technology, whereas analog mixing consoles and music production have always moved at a slower pace, and I think that partly was because it's a more creative process. Fundamentally, I always answer people like that these are analog and this is analog, and a lot of acoustical instruments obviously are analog. So somewhere in the signal chain between mouth and earpiece, you're in the analog domain. And the tools and sophistication of digital sort of is getting more able to replicate and in some instances replace some of that analog technology, but it hasn't got there yet. And interestingly, in my 30-odd years at SSL, I've always found it amusing that there's this kind of, 5 years' time, everything's going to be digital. And I've been here 30 years and that still hasn't happened yet. The sort of ethos of Audiotonics is to keep the companies within the group have their own identity. And to that extent, we have our own identity, we have our own engineering teams, we have, sort of pretty much autonomy as to what products we're going to be making and what markets we're going to be targeting. One of the things that I would say that has been a huge benefit of it, though, is that at a certain level, we do share sort of expertise, shall we say, between the group. We don't necessarily go and talk to them about one another's products and what we're going to be doing, but sometimes at a technological level, we have discussions about, we've spent an awful lot of time in the last few years developing and working with Audinate to develop Dante-based audio over IP integration. And so we've got quite a good expertise in how that works. And so, occasionally we'll have some discussion with one of the other members of the group about, sort of how that works, benefits, features of that sort of thing. It's quite a powerful sort of both individual and focused intellectual property group of companies, but with the benefits of sort of shared abilities and experience and resource at the sort of at the back end of all of that. Having been involved in the business, certainly for the last probably 20 years, of thinking about what that next big thing was going to be, almost entirely being surprised by the answer to that question as things evolved. We've seen the increasing power of things like laptop machines, where, a few years ago, you could only really do audio production in the digital domain on a desktop type powered system, and laptops were underpowered for that. And you now start to think about, there's pocket-sized interfaces, and those sorts of things bring their own challenges. And in some ways, SSL is not in the business of developing those products, but it is in the business of developing products that surround those to turn that utilitarian object into something that's much more focused on an application or a solution. We've done an awful lot of stuff with audio over IP and networked infrastructures in our broadcast systems. We don't see much of that penetrating any of the music stuff. But to be able to say, okay, I'm going to use this room for recording, I'm going to set up my recording system in this other room, I'm just going to plug into the wall to connect those things together. All of that stuff has been eschewed by the recording industry largely up till now, but it's quite prevalent in education, and you could see the benefits of it for some applications. But equally, those people who perceive the benefits of analog and want analog processing or work in a hybrid environment, we'll be there for them in terms of developing tools for that as well. It's the sort of subtleties and the benefits of analog processing are something that we really like to feel that we're moving forwards. We're not a company that looks backwards all that much. We try to keep that as an art moving forwards.